Welcome back. You're watching Ayubowan Sri Lanka with me. I'm Krisanta, and my guest this morning, Catherine Liyanage, who is the founder of ECSAT. We'll be talking about ECSAT, what exactly it is, and what they're going to do very soon. Before that, Catherine, we were on a very emotional angle about discussing what these children have to undergo. It's not only children that we're talking about, we are adults, but let's focus on children because they're the most wanted. Catherine, what is the greatest fear? Now, if you take a family, a mother and a father, who has a child with a disability, who is immovable, or something like Down syndrome, what's the biggest fear in their life, the parent's life?
The thing that comes across to us quite often is the future.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the opportunity for independent living.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few places you can live independently in Sri Lanka, so parents know when I get sick, when I die, when I can't carry a child anymore, when I can't take a child out, that child, you know, in some ways is going to have their life end when my life ends. And, you know, there have been horrible stories about parents in the UK actually, about parents killing their children when they know they're going to die.
Really?
Yeah, because they have so much fear. What is the world going to do to this child when I'm not here to protect them? And it's all over the world. It's all over the world that there is this problem. And most of the parents that we talk to, when you actually talk about the future, especially when we first meet them and they don't know what's possible for their children, you know, one mother said to us, you know, I cry every day. Every day I wake up and I cry because I know the future holds nothing for this child. Happily, after a year, she's now the head of one of our parent support groups. She supports other parents. They work together to build up, you know, some hope for the future, what their children can do. But if they don't have that support and if they don't have anybody to talk to, they themselves are also very isolated, and they think they're the only people who are coping with it because they don't have contacts with other people. Normally the only contact people have is with a doctor, and doctors have a lot of work to do, and you know, generally a doctor will see you for 2 minutes and then say, okay, get out, I need to see the next person. And with somebody who's coping or trying to cope with a child who has a disability, with fears for the future, with all of that, it's not enough. It's not enough.
Catherine, another question is that kids of this nature, especially as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of love which they need, from what I understand. Their life is about love, is about getting love and giving love back. So how a family with several children and one child having this problem, giving so much attention to this individual child, with your experience, how has it affected the peers, the other family members in the family? Has that been has a bad effect on the siblings, or how do you see that?
I think, as with any children, if one is favoured, the others could resent it. You know, those things are always there. But I think that what we have to recognise is that yes, children with disabilities need love, but children without disabilities also need love. And one of the problems is that a lot of the community members and some families will also say, you know, burden is a word that's used a lot. But you know, people with disabilities, children with disabilities are a burden to us, and you know, that is a problem because that's the attitude. I don't think children with disabilities are necessarily a burden. I think they bring a lot of things that families wouldn't have if they didn't have that child. But normally we don't recognise those things. What we actually focus on is, you know, what are the extra costs? Will that person ever be able to earn a salary? Will they be able to contribute to the family when they're older? And those are the things we focus on. But actually, you know, if qualifications when you go for a job were different, if qualifications were about, you know, adaptability, if qualifications were about the capacity to empathise, you know, if these were valued, then I think a lot more people, especially with intellectual disabilities, would get jobs. But it's the biggest one of the biggest problems that we have is that when you employ somebody, the qualifications on paper are so important, and a lot of people with disabilities don't get the opportunity to go to school, even though they may be very, very capable. So everybody's trying to employ more people with disabilities, but especially to reduce this idea that people are a burden. But the opportunities are not there, because everybody has to tick boxes about qualifications. So until we improve the education system, we're not going to be able to change those attitudes about people being a burden, because there aren't opportunities for them without educational qualifications.
Right. Catherine, I'm going to ask you a very, very a serious question, something very emotional. When people come to you, having members who are disabled, have they ever asked you, and if they have, what has been your response to questions like, why me? Why did I have this child? What have I done to deserve this? Have you ever come across this question, and what has been your response?
Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
Okay.
Always. One of the hardest things is that families of people with disabilities are often told by other people in the village, you did something bad, you did something bad in your past life, and that's why you've got this child. And this is directly told to people. It's told to people the day they give birth to the child. People who help a mother when she's having a child say to her, your life is over. This one is better. This one died. These kind of things come along. By the time that people do come to us, yes, there are those questions. What we prefer to do is to get people in groups as parents to talk to each other about that, to talk through those things. Because at the end of the day, I don't have a disabled child, and you don't have I don't think have a disabled child, and so from our point of view, we can always say, academically, it's nothing to do with you. This is nothing that you've done wrong. People with disabilities are all over the world. People with disabilities are part of the range of human nature. It's not that this person is different, is wrong. They are just a way, a part of the whole span of human nature. But the reality is the best thing, the best way for people to cope is to talk to other people in the same situation. So whether you have a disability yourself and you're talking to another disabled person who can say to you, you feel angry right now, you feel that you shouldn't be in this situation, but I'm going to tell you how I got through it, and they talk together, or through parents who one maybe says, I want it all to end. I've just had enough. I can't take this anymore. And somebody else will say, I've been there. I felt like that. They can help each other. They need to be together, and they need to be linked up. And the best thing that people can do is to link people with other parents so they can support each other. Because we don't have, there's no answer. You can't,
Catherine, tell me, what does ECSAT do? Especially when it comes to, you highlighted a very important thing as to what happens next to the child, what's the future going to be like to this child. As a country, as a nation, as a whole, what are the strategic legislation drawn up for these type of children? What is the system going to be like, and what does ECSAT do, and how important do you think that the organizations who are into this, how important do you think their service is?
To take organizations first, I think they are very important. The government does a lot. The government tries to do a lot, but we don't, as a country, we don't have a bottomless pit of money. And I think what the government has been trying to do is to support institutions and orphanages, which I personally am very, very strongly against. And they have to be there because people are giving up their children. But what ECSAT tries to do, and what I think a number of organizations are now trying to do, is to make sure that parents have an alternative, because institutions will always be there. But until you change the situation for the family so they actually feel they can cope with the child, they feel they can make this a successful life for themselves, they are not going to stop sending them to institutions and orphanages. And right now in Sri Lanka, the numbers of kids in orphanages who are not orphans are huge. And there's not just disabled, that's non-disabled as well. They're not actually orphans, but they tend to be from families who can't necessarily cope, who don't have support in their community, and therefore they think, well, the easiest thing is just to send this one away. Now, logically, it's the one with a disability who's more likely to be sent away, especially if you're living in poverty and you know that somebody's going to have to earn money to make sure that the family can prosper and the community can prosper. So, yeah, I think I just want to show this one, the National Policy on Disability in Sri Lanka, and I don't know if that can be, yeah, National Policy on Disability. This is the English language version. Every disabled person, every family of a disabled person should read this. It's a long document, and you know, wherever possible, organizations, government, I encourage everybody to try and summarize this so that people can understand what's in here, because people actually have a lot of rights, people with disabilities, children with disabilities, and the government policy is an excellent document. And it's very similar to the UN Convention, and in that way we're doing extremely well on the legislation side, but the problem is people don't know it's there. And
Catherine, where can somebody get this?
you can get this from social services. Yeah, and everybody has the right to get copies of this in their own languages, in all 3 languages.